Gaza has been virtually destroyed. 71,000 people at least were killed. As the Foreign Minister of Palestine, why do you have any faith in the so-called peace plan, the Board of Peace proposal that the US President Donald Trump has?
We have to stay hopeful. For us Palestinians, hope is not an option. You have to continue projecting that sense of hope. And today the priority is to stop the bleeding in Gaza and on the West Bank. We need to save people's lives because we want Palestinians to steadfast in their country. We don't want any more deaths, any more killings, and any more displacement.
International law, international humanitarian law, we've seen both were thrown out of the wind. The United States looked the other way throughout this entire period.
We continue to look upon international law because our right is enshrined in international law. Well, after over 2 years of bombardment, the situation is catastrophic, with 82% destruction of the infrastructure, with the number of casualties, and what you have just mentioned on the killings, the 72,000 and the 172,000 injuries, are the direct casualties and deaths. Our people in Gaza have been bombarded day in and day out for 2 years. So the needs are immense. Today people need to have clean water, they have to eat. Hundreds of thousands of people are malnourished because food and water were used as tools of war. And this is a war crime. We expect India to continue backing Palestine and backing international law, because what Palestinians stand for is whatever international law gives them, and their statehood is enshrined in international law. India must be in line with its values. India is one of the largest countries, one of the largest democracies. It has been a two-stater ever since, and throughout the past 7 decades, it has been a great supporter of Palestinians. And as such, India needs to stand up tall for its values and what it believes in terms of the democracy and the international law. And as such, we would like to see a balanced approach when it comes to Israel-Palestine.
It's been nearly 3 months since Israel's genocidal war on the people of Palestine in Gaza came to a partial halt. I say partial because a ceasefire came into effect in the first half of November, following a broad and controversial peace proposal that the US President Donald Trump announced and pushed through. But since then, Israel has continued to use violence in Gaza, directly and through proxies, and it is estimated that over 600 or 700 people have lost their lives, despite a ceasefire supposedly being in place. In addition, violence against Palestinians in the occupied Palestinian territories, the West Bank, has continued, again taking a toll of life, people getting displaced, Palestinian prisoners, many of them prominent individuals, continue to languish in Israeli jails. And in the aftermath of the Board of Peace proposal being pushed ahead and formally announced by President Donald Trump, a number of questions still remain, of course, within Palestine, among Palestinians, among the wider Arab community and the world, about what exactly is happening in Gaza, what exactly is going to happen as we move forward. Joining me to look at the situation in Gaza and Palestine and the entire US peace proposal is the Foreign Minister of Palestine, Dr. Varsen Aghabekian Shahin. Dr. Shahin, welcome to The Wire, welcome to India.
Thank you very much, and thank you for hosting me.
I'm going to start with a sharp and perhaps bleak observation. Gaza has been virtually destroyed. The Israeli Defense Forces today themselves are now willing to acknowledge that 71,000 people at least were killed in the Israeli attacks on the territory. International law, international humanitarian law, we've seen both were thrown out of the wind. The United States looked the other way throughout this entire period. As the foreign minister of Palestine, why do you have any faith in the so-called peace plan, the Board of Peace proposal that the US President Donald Trump has proposed, and I would say, or many would say, pushed onto the world, pushed onto Palestine? Why do you have faith? Why do you believe that this offers a possible way forward?
We have to stay hopeful. For us Palestinians, hope is not an option. You have to continue projecting that sense of hope. And today the priority is to stop the bleeding in Gaza and on the West Bank. We need to save people's lives because we want Palestinians to steadfast in their country. We don't want any more deaths, any more killings, and any more displacement. We continue to look upon international law because our right is enshrined in international law. Albeit international law today is under attack and it's being weakened, but in the final analysis, it's still international law that governs. And in the final analysis, the world today is divided. Some for international law, some for finding alternatives. But for Palestine, we continue to say it is international law what governs, and our issue, the conflict, the occupation, needs to be solved as per international law and as per previous resolutions.
I'll come to some of the broad contours of the Board of Peace proposal and what Donald Trump is really trying to do there. But before we get there, tell us, so that viewers in India can learn firsthand from you, what is the situation on the ground in Gaza right now? In terms of the amount of humanitarian aid and food and medical supplies getting in. Paint us a broad picture of the situation there.
Well, after over 2 years of bombardment, the situation is catastrophic in all terms, with 82% destruction of the infrastructure, with the number of casualties, and what you have just mentioned on the killings, the 72,000, and the 172,000 injuries are the direct casualties and deaths, let alone the indirect ones, because there are tens of thousands that have been killed because of a slow death, because of limited medication, medical equipment, etc., etc. Our people in Gaza have been bombarded day in and day out for 2 years. And you can imagine what that does to the mental health of the people. We have 2.3 million people in Gaza that have been under brutal atrocities for 2 years. So the needs are immense. Today, people need to have clean water, they have to eat. Hundreds of thousands of people are malnourished because food and water were used as tools of war. And this is a war crime. So the impact of this malnourishment we will see in years to come, because we know the effects of malnourishment on children and so forth. No schooling, no healthcare system, no cultural centers, whatever you can think of, there's an enormous need. So when we speak of the need and the humanitarian assistance, that is enormous. And what is entering today to Gaza is not the extent we wish to enter to meet the enormous needs. So to have that need met, we need to first of all ensure that there is a complete ceasefire. Today there is a partial ceasefire in Gaza, because also you've mentioned that killings continue, injuries continue, and the destruction of infrastructure continues. I believe there were some 3,000 structures destroyed since the ceasefire took place. So we need the border crossings opened. We need more humanitarian assistance coming in. We need to immediately start relief measures. People need to have a roof on their tops. Today, most of the people are living in tents. It is the winter season. We've seen people flooded in their tents. So I can go on and on about the need. It is enormous, and it is not getting into the extent that is needed.
And Israel continues to block medical supplies, food supplies, humanitarian supplies?
To some extent, yes, because all of this is not entering in the amounts that is needed.
And the world had expected, in fact, when Donald Trump announced his plan and the ceasefire was finally accepted, that the relief which the people of Gaza were entitled to, and that this was going to come to them, but that clearly hasn't happened yet, as you're saying.
Not to the extent that is needed, definitely.
Right.
And the crossing is still closed. We hear of opening the crossing today, tomorrow, yesterday, but it hasn't yet.
What specific guarantees, what concrete guarantees does Palestine seek in terms of protecting civilians in Gaza? And have you spoken to other Arab states about how this issue needs to be foregrounded?
Yes, there is consultation with Arab states ongoing, and we take decisions collectively. What needs to be done is for the guarantors of the peace agreement to assess what has happened since 2.5 months and put to account whoever is not complying with the terms of the agreement. And we know that Israel, from past trends, usually violates such agreements. And we see how Prime Minister Netanyahu stalls every time a push or a step forward needs to be taken.
Right. A key element, or one of the elements of the Trump plan, and this is reflected in the Security Council resolution, I think 2802.
2803.
2803, I'm sorry. And the UN resolution also makes reference to other documents like the France-Saudi plan. One element, or an important element of this, is that Hamas should disarm. I would imagine that this call for Hamas to disarm is the product of what many would say is the illegitimate use of force by Hamas targeting civilians and so on and so forth. But Hamas is not the only armed group to have done that. There is an indictment in the International Criminal Court against Prime Minister Netanyahu,
Yes.
against important Israeli personalities for the deliberate killing of civilians. There is a case that South Africa has brought in the ICJ, accusing Israel of genocide that is proceeding. Does it bother you that the implementation of peace going forward is contingent on Hamas disarming and abiding by the rules and the Palestinian Authority abiding by the rules, but there is no balancing or no equivalent or no call for Israel to give guarantees that it will not target civilians again, that it will not engage in the kind of war crimes that it has been credibly accused of engaging in?
Wrongdoing perpetrated by any side is wrongdoing, and the wrongdoer should be held to account, including Israel. And yes, we need to hear more calls for restraining Israel of its wrongdoing. And we always say that the wrongdoing of Israel passing with impunity for so long is what brought us to where we are today. Had there been checks and balances and accountability measures, Israel may have been somehow restrained by, but if wrongdoing continues unabated, then the wrongdoer will continue doing whatever they're doing.
Not only is there an absence of a reference to these crimes in the documents related to Trump's plan, but the Trump administration is actively trying to sabotage the case before the International Criminal Court by imposing sanctions on the prosecutor or the judges. This too, I suppose, is an indication of how things are going to proceed.
But we know that it's important that there is no interference in the work of any international court. And as such, international law needs to be respected in the manner it should be respected by all.
Madam Foreign Minister, you are visiting India right now. You are here for an important meeting of Arab states with the government of India. Prime Minister Modi, it is said, is likely to travel to the region, perhaps to visit Israel. India is one of those countries that, one of those big countries that really refused to condemn or restrain Israel or seek to restrain Israel for the way in which it used force against the people of Palestine. In fact, India is one of the handful of countries that continue to sell weapons. We have documented at The Wire the sale of drones, for example, the sale of munitions. In the experience of the people of Palestine, India has always stood by the aspirations of Palestinian people. Right. But is it your concern? Do you feel that India today has chosen a side, that it is no longer neutral the way you perceived it to be?
Well, we expect India to continue backing Palestine and backing international law, because what Palestinians stand for is whatever international law gives them, and their statehood is enshrined in international law. India must be in line with its values. India is one of the largest countries, one of the largest democracies. It has been a two-stater ever since, and throughout the past 7 decades, it has been a great supporter of Palestinians. And as such, India needs to stand up tall for its values and what it believes in terms of the democracy and the international law. And as such, we would like to see a balanced approach when it comes to Israel-Palestine.
Is there more that India can do in terms of concrete assistance? I know that there are programs. I mean, India supports the United Nations programs, UNRWA and so on. India has also provided bilateral assistance to the PA. Is there more things that India could do specifically? Are there areas that you would like India to focus on?
We would like India to continue with its humanitarian assistance. As you said, it has been supporting UNRWA, it has been supporting the humanitarian assistance in Gaza and many development projects in Gaza and on the West Bank. We would like that to continue. But we would also like it to stand firm in international forums. It has been voting, generally speaking, positively in terms of resolutions related to Palestine. But it's important today more than ever to stand up and be very vocal about statehood, about what real peace means in the area.
I want to ask you briefly also about the domestic side, in Palestine, specifically the PA. There haven't been national elections now for nearly 20 years.
Yes.
And Abu Mazen is, President Abbas is a widely respected person within Palestine and around the world. But somewhere down the line, you have 2 or 3 generations of Palestinians who have an experience, who have never been consulted.
Right.
Do you feel that this places a question mark over the legitimacy of the Palestinian leadership, and what could the leadership do to ensure that there is a more broad-based support?
President Abbas has very clearly stated, and in a letter to leaders of the world, that elections are a Palestinian demand, and they will take place once the situation permits and the environment is conducive. My children, for example, have never elected, and one of my children is almost 40 years old. We haven't elected because there are reasons. One of the main reasons is occupation, because you cannot have elections when Gaza is severed, when Palestinians in East Jerusalem cannot elect. If you want to have elections in India, for example, would you be able to have elections on part of India while the other part cannot? No, you won't. It is Israel that has not allowed us to go along with elections, because Israel is not permitting East Jerusalemites to be part of the elections. Although the agreements with Israel stipulate that East Jerusalemites, as Palestinians under occupation, can elect. They have elected in the first 2 elections we have implemented, but now they won't allow them. And we will not accept to have elections without East Jerusalemites. Politically, you cannot do that. So elections will take place, and President Abbas said, a year after the situation calms down, there's an end of war in Gaza, we will have elections.
Madam Foreign Minister, you have put your finger on a fundamental problem here. It's the elephant in the room, elephant in all conference rooms around the world, which is that the entire approach of the Palestinian leadership and of, I would say, all countries that stand by and support the aspirations of Palestinian people for an independent state with East Jerusalem as its capital. Countries have stood by this, but today, is it still possible to believe, to have hope, to have an expectation that the two-state solution, as we understood it to mean, is at all a possibility? The reason I ask is that Israel has virtually formally repudiated the idea. They have annexed the whole of Jerusalem. They continue to grab Palestinian territory in the West Bank. What they have said about Gaza is also very, very ambiguous. It's almost as if there is a plan to ensure that Gaza is now severed from Palestine completely. The US today, I don't know what its formal position still, maybe the formal position is still to support a two-state solution, but the US has endorsed Israel's annexation of East Jerusalem. Should we still have hope and expectation that the two-state solution is some kind of a viable goal?
Yes, and I'll tell you why.
Yes.
Now, Israel's policy is very well known, creating facts on the ground. But facts on the ground, illegally created, don't negate the fact that the place is occupied. It is enshrined in the law. The ICJ ruling, the opinion has clearly said this is occupied territory. It's not contested territory, and as such, that occupation needs to be dismantled. We've seen Israeli unilateral measures against international law. But if we look strategically at the area, there is no other viable solution but the two-state solution. There are, of course, other options. There is a one-state solution.
That's right, which many Palestinians today speak about.
Yes, but one-state solution, if Israel is not accepting a two-state solution, the one-state solution is much harder, because would that state be a state for all of its citizens, where Palestinians, Israelis, Muslims, Jews, Christians have the same rights? Israel would not accept that. Would it accept it if in 50 years the Palestinian Arab population will be much larger than the Israeli Jewish population? That will not be acceptable. Will we accept to continue living under the status quo, continue living in an apartheid state where all our rights are violated, where our lives are suffocated? No. This might be shoved down our throats, but that will not erase our rights. And people that have suffered for 7 decades immensely, and the suffering has culminated in this genocidal, brutal war on Gaza, with continuing brutality on the West Bank, will not forget that they were stripped from those rights. And the violence maybe we're seeing today will come back to haunt us in the future, and it might be a much larger violence than what we're seeing today. So it is in the best interest of everyone to say enough is enough. And if we want to strategically look at the area, to say the best solution and the most viable is the two states, it is the best for Israel, and it is the best for the Palestinians. If Israel wants to live in the area and live normally in the area, it should become a normal state in the area. Today, Israel is not a normal state. Israel has a genocidal war in Gaza, continues to violate people's lives. It occupies Palestine physically and and it occupies our souls and our spirits. That will not be accepted.
Right. 242 and 338 are the bedrock resolutions of the UN Security Council and encapsulate the idea of this two-state solution. And then you have subsequent agreements, the Oslo agreements and so on, which created a broad framework on which Palestine and Israel could have proceeded. Israel has turned its back on that. We see virtually every day, every week, news coming of fresh areas of the West Bank being grabbed. We see completely unrestrained behavior by settler groups, by settlers, terrorizing Palestinian families, villagers, Bedouins, families and villages getting evicted. How concerned are you that with the world focused on and being preoccupied with what happened in Gaza, the enormous tragedy, that actually Israel is stepping up its annexationist approach on the West Bank?
Very concerned. Because if we speak about Palestine, we speak about the entirety of the occupied state of Palestine. And people are fearing that now it's calming on the Gaza front, but the settlers are unleashed on the West Bank. And although President Trump himself said there will be no annexation, but what we see on the ground is a creeping annexation by the day. And we need to be worried because what is happening on the West Bank and officializing annexation, the Israelis want to have it pass in their Knesset to say that the West Bank can be annexed. So you are legalizing criminality because it's criminal to annex an occupied territory. So are we fearful? Yes, we are.
What do you say about the fact that the Board of Peace, and I'm coming now to the whole Trump approach, it has the US as a member, President Trump is going to head it, Israel is part of it, virtually every important power in the region has signed up for this. But the country whose land this Board of Peace is supposedly going to administer, which is Palestine, has not been invited, is not part of this. You aren't at the table, so to speak. Iran, of course, is also not there, but we'll come to Iran a little bit later. How concerned are you that the future of Gaza is being discussed and debated and proceeded with without any representation from Palestine?
Well, Palestine should be represented at any table because Palestine is a key stakeholder. And it's enough really for countries and people to be speaking about us without us and planning for us without us. It's much easier and much better and much more effective if we are around the table and we have a say.
Are you concerned that the Board of Peace plan is a sort of prettified version of the earlier announcements and tweets that Trump put out? The idea that Palestinians will be asked to go from Gaza, that this will be developed as a beautiful, so-called beautiful place, but without the Palestinians. And the reason I'm saying this is because even though Trump and the US say that there will be no displacement and so on and so forth, but we know, for example, based on what the president of so-called Somaliland has said after he recognized Israel, that part of the discussion was to accept Palestinians in Somaliland. So the Israelis are clearly working on the idea of kicking out the Gazans from there. Is this something that you see as a real possibility? And if so, are there guarantees that you can insist the Arab members of the board and other friendly countries of the board should abide by and to ensure that this doesn't happen?
Yes, of course. We are for no displacement of any Palestinian from anywhere of occupied state of Palestine. This is the policy of Israel since its inception. The displacement of Palestinians is on the agenda and it has been worked on in different forms, genocide in Gaza, creeping annexation on the West Bank, and it continues. But if you look at the map and you see how many people left Gaza during this genocidal war under the most brutal atrocities. And if you remember the photos of people coming back to their homes
Yes.
when the first ceasefire took
Exactly.
place almost a year ago, you can have an idea about the resilience of the Palestinian people. I mean, they were all coming back with almost nothing. They knew they were coming back to rubble. And a couple days ago, we know that about 70,000 Palestinians have signed to come back from the ones that have left in the past 2 years. So these people, these Palestinian resilient people, say it very clearly to the world. Although we're going back to rubble, we're going back to Gaza, and we will not leave Gaza.
Right.
We will not leave.
Right.
We know what leaving our land means. We've left in 1948 forcefully, and we will not do that again.
We're coming close to the end of our time, but two final questions. How concerned are you about the possibility of a fresh conflict between the US and Iran? We know that tempers or the sort of temperature cooled a little bit about a week ago, but once again, there's talk of the possibility of the US attacking Iran. How bothered, how concerned are you by this?
Anyone in the area must be concerned because any instability in the area will invariably affect everyone in the area. So we are concerned, and we hope that conflict is resolved around a table, because wars will only breed more violence and more wars.
And there's an irony of sorts, I guess, in a US president speaking about a board of peace for Gaza when he is threatening to attack Iran, when he's just attacked Venezuela and kidnapped its president. There is something is not fitting in the picture here.
Well, peace is peace. Peace is not making war, and this is what we aspire.
Exactly. My final question, India is one of those countries that has been invited by the US to join the Board of Peace. India has not yet taken a position. Were Prime Minister Modi to ask you, as the Foreign Minister of Palestine, please advise me on whether India should say yes or say no. Should we sign up or should we keep out? What would your advice to him be?
I would say please assess what the Board of Peace stands for, and if it's in line with your values, with what India aspires to, with what India stands for, and with the vision of India of a balanced foreign policy.
Right. Well, thank you very much for giving your time, and I wish you a successful visit to Delhi and to India. Thank you very much.
Thank you.